It's 6 PM. Calling the meeting to order. Can I get a roll call, please?
Derek Wharf. Jennifer Bain. Derek Duff. Midnight.
Here.
Ron Siniski.
Here.
Tom Rinke.
Here.
Anna Arizona. Biggie Kilber. Here. Yes. I think we have one absent.
All right, committee business. We are going to do a rate review presentation, and I'm not mistaken, probably Deb.
All right, so I'll kick this off with the rate review process overview. And then Lance and I will go back and forth as we walk through each system to talk about the findings and recommendations and the total bill impacts. So with respect to the rate development process, every 2 years, the rate review committee looks at the utility rates, and we walk through a process that includes identifying the financial needs of each system individually. And that includes the capital improvements, which Lance is going to talk a lot about because that is a key driver in the rate recommendations and the rate increases. There is debt service associated with prior investments that the city is still responsible for repaying. That is a subcomponent of capital improvement costs. Operation and maintenance costs, just the ongoing staffing, materials, and supplies needed to run the systems, and the financial contingencies and reserves that are prudent, help to stabilize rates over the long term and in case of emergencies, are there to help shore up the systems. The other component is to then, once we identify the costs, is to look at the revenues that come in to support the systems, which is primarily user rates and some other fees and charges, to determine how well the revenue from rates align with the projected costs. And then the committee makes recommendations about the rate increases and also considers the rate structures, which determine how individual customer types are charged. The systems that the rate review committee is responsible for reviewing are utility enterprises, meaning that they are self-supported by fees and charges. They are not supported by the general revenues of the city and property taxes and other shared revenues. So these are water, sanitary sewer, which we also refer to as wastewater, stormwater, which we see a lot of tonight, and street maintenance. And again, these are enterprise funds of the city that are infrastructure systems that are supported by specific fees and charges related to those services. There is some additional funding that comes in from new development charges, which are systems development charges, that go to pay specifically for capital improvements for future growth. But the primary funding, over 90% of the funding, comes from these user fees that are charged through the monthly utility billing statements that are sent out to individual customers. The process and the methods follow industry standard practice for how to equitably recover the costs of these utility services. We consider there are some characteristics of the service that are considered in setting the fees, like what type of water is provided, because there are two different water products that are produced by the city. One is the potable water that serves most commercial residential customers, but there's also non-potable water that goes for some irrigation purposes. That receives a different rate than the potable water. There are fixed and variable costs that need to be considered, and how much comes from fixed monthly service charges versus the variable costs that scale with the type of, the quantity of water use. The principles established and the methods are established to recover costs from customer classes in proportion to their service requirements, so their water use or their wastewater discharge, the use of the street system, those sorts of things. So we go through a very comprehensive review of not only the overall revenue needs of the systems, but also the characteristics of the customers served, and how to most equitably and fairly allocate those costs. In terms of the overall rate increases, a little bit of context is helpful here. I think just to understand that the national utility trends, and there's different sources of information available for different time periods. So the table on the left shows that basically when you compare water and wastewater bills, which are inclusive in most places of stormwater services as well, that those annual percent increases have the trend has been to that those are about double the rate of inflation. At least that was before inflation got particularly significant after 2020. So over the last 15, 20 years, rate increases have averaged 5–6% per year, while inflation has been about 2.5%. And the reason that utility rates tend to, the increases outpace inflation, is because inflation is an indicator of just the rising costs of different materials and services. And the utility systems, while there is the need to pay for ongoing operation and maintenance, there's also a need to increase the level of spending for capital improvements and to reinvest in the system for repairs, replacements, expansion, new regulatory requirements that are outside of just the general cost increases that are experienced by individuals and cities and utility services. So that's kind of the national trend. And then you'll see in the graphic that in the Western United States, utility rates tend to be more expensive than in other parts of the country. And there's lots of different factors that play into that, but being in the West, that is in terms of comparative information, that is the most relevant to consider. The bottom chart kind of puts forward what we're going to be talking about today and the recommendations, and gives you the impact so you can see that relative in the context of these national trends. And you can see that the individual bills for each system that would be the result of actually the bills shown are the current bill, and then the recommended overall annual increase is the 4.4%, which you can see is right in line, if not maybe a little bit lower than what that has been the national average in terms of overall rate increases. So just to provide a little context. Yes.
See something about the rates.
Please.
And I wanted to just mention, folks, and for those in the audience who may wonder, well, why is the West so expensive? We have many more regulations than some other parts of the country. So part of what you're looking at on the screen is the cost of state regulation, which is out of our hands. When I used to work in Tennessee, things were a lot easier there than they are here. So regulation creates unfunded mandates. We end up paying the bill for things that we don't want to do in this community particularly. Thank you.
Okay, so just now, starting to narrow the focus to Newberg. As I said, every 2 years, the city and the rate review committee take a look at the rates and the financial picture of the utilities. And there are different factors that, you know, every time they look at this, it's like there's some good news and bad news. And the good news are things that lower the pressure on the rates and help to mitigate rate increases. The upward pressure comes from things like inflation and other things that need to be accommodated within the rates. So looking at this particular point in time, the city has experienced steady customer growth, which has helped to spread the cost over a larger base. And city finance has worked hard to refinance existing debt that's associated primarily with the wastewater system to get the most favorable borrowing terms to reduce the annual costs that's paid on past investments, and limiting future borrowing to keep down the financing costs, which are quite high these days. Leveraging existing reserves and other sources of funds, like prospectively some new revenue from red light camera fees and other investment interest like CDs and things. So doing what they can to leverage additional resources to mitigate the impact on the monthly user fees. On the opposing side is the fact that, as the city manager pointed out, there's significant capital investment in part due to state regulations, in part due to federal regulations, and there's aging infrastructure that needs to be replaced and maintained. While the city has generally, in large part through the rate review committee process, stayed current with annual rate adjustments to avoid large spikes or increases in any given year, there have been years where no rate increases were implemented. Thus, there's a need for catch up just in terms of keeping pace with inflation. And that's true on the transportation utility fee. The inflation that everyone has experienced has really impacted the utilities as well, particularly construction costs. Over the last few years since the last rate review update really went out of control. More so than any period of time since I've been doing this work for 3 decades. And it impacts in particular the water system and the plan there. So Lance and the city manager can talk more about that. With that, I will turn it over to Lance to talk about the water system and some of the improvements.
Thank you. Thank you, Deb, and Will for explaining the button. So water system overview, our drinking water system primarily is what we're talking about here. And that's basically broken up into 4 distinct parts. Our water source, which is groundwater wells that are along the river, water treatment, which takes that groundwater and makes it basically able for us to drink it and use it on a day-to-day basis, meeting all of our regulatory and requirements, as well as storage and distribution for both providing reliable, consistent water 24/7, as well as accommodating any other needs for water like fire and emergency needs. So that's pretty much the basics of our water system in general. Water system needs really the same goals that we have pretty much every year for water, safe, high quality water that we can all enjoy and drink at a very cost effective rate. Making sure that we have enough water supply both now and in the future as the community grows. Also providing all the support we need for that future growth, any issues that we have for resiliency regarding natural disaster potentials, and in a reasonable way. Certainly we can't provide for every possible outcome, but we provide for those that we think are most reasonable. And part of that is meeting that life cycle cost and also providing rates that are something that is capable for the public and businesses and community to absorb. And this also provides really goals for incremental solutions that really focus on the long term. You think about even our own lifetimes. My grandma is 94, great for her. Some of our water infrastructure will last 100, 200 plus years. So we're really thinking much longer term than just even the immediate current fiscal year when we're talking about the needs of our utilities. And of course, city ownership. So water system investment needs are both short-term, immediate needs, as well as long-term. These are identified in our master planning efforts. This picture diagram just sort of shows you a slide of all the different pipes and networks of infrastructure that we have in our water system, which provides drinking water to every house in the community. The city water system also has a lot of aging infrastructure. A lot of the infrastructure that we're building today, like I said, could last well over 100 years. A lot of the infrastructure that was built in the 50s, the 60s, 70s, they were dealing with older technology, wasn't as robust as what we have today. Different manufacturing processes that don't really allow for those pipelines to last as long as a lot of the ductile iron that we're installing now. So older infrastructure requires more investment, more replacement, more upkeep. The fire flow requirements to meet today's regulatory requirements are higher than they were in the 50s and 60s. And so there's additional investment to be made there as well. Oops, one too far. So this is just, I'm not going to read through all these, but this is just sort of a list of system investments and projects that are currently in our master plan or items that have been identified through various means to really focus on the different needs of the system, whether that's general maintenance needs, plant requirements, line issues, all of the seismic issues or fire flow issues, as well as some, again, both state and regulatory issues. Our groundwater treatment plant is currently under a mandate of state requirements for doing some improvements and investments at the plant and that are new requirements, and then also things that are like federal requirements like the AWIA risk and resiliency assessment in items which are really federal driven to minimize risk over the long term for water infrastructure. And I don't know if Will wants to chime in at all on this one, but in the past we were working on a plant replacement for the groundwater treatment plant. However, in that process, there has been a lot of items identified that made the cost of those improvements and plant replacement much higher than what was originally anticipated, both from geotechnical issues where we've identified issues as far as seismic and slope stability at the existing plant site, all the way to just, as Deb mentioned, the significant increases in inflation where we've seen, really, really structural changes in the cost of some of these plant investments. And we'll feel free to chime or just add to that.
So for anyone listening at home or here in the audience, I'd just like you to understand that we had lined up a package including a WIFIA loan, which is a federal mechanism, to partially pay for what everybody thought was going to be a $21.5 million water plant. And in the course of just 2 years, the cost for that same amount of water production had ballooned to the point that to get all the capacity we need would be $40 million. 40 million, not 20.5. So I had to pull the plug on that debt package, and now we've had to start over. So the rates that you see today contain a water rate that has the assumption that in 7 to 8 years, when we have retired our existing debt, we are going to have to build some of our capacity that we need. Even in 7 to 8 years, we will not be able to afford, without outside grant assistance, all the capacity we need. So we're going to have to build a plant that can be extended in 2 phases, because the one-shot deal can't be afforded. That's the reality. Part 2 of my reality, our reality, I live here too, is in the early 2030s, we're going to be having hosepipe bans in the summer if we don't add to our capacity. Hosepipe bans, because our water generating capacity will not be sufficient when you take into account our fire reserve. Yeah, so that means that in the hottest months, we will not be able to manufacture enough water in our current plant to keep up with demand and at the same time keep the reserve that we need in case there's a fire in town. That will mean that the use of watering yards and gardens will have to be curtailed in the summertime if we can't build more capacity. So the current plan that lies before you today includes the idea of building some capacity after our debt is retired and trying to get outside funding to build all the capacity if we can.
Okay, so this chart here shows you the projected capital improvements over the next 8 years. And you'll see that large bar at the end is that plant, that estimated plant improvement, whatever it's going to specifically look like, which, you know, there's some years to figure out the best course of action there. But what we planned here is that at this point in time, to try to generate, as Will said, you know, enough revenue from the rates to pay for a $20-some million plant improvement is just not feasible. So at the financial plan that is being put forward today and to council assumes that about half of the plant will be funded by some sort of long-term financing and or grants. And in the interim, the smaller bars represent those seismic resiliency improvements that are required, the other upsizing of water lines that are also required by the state, and a host of other improvements that Lance had talked about. Yeah, go ahead.
And just for clarity for those listening at home or here, that bar represents with current pricing escalated forward a little bit for inflation, that's half the capacity we need to build. That's not all the capacity we need. So we have to find federal matching funds or some other thing if we're going to do it in that time frame. Otherwise, we're going to end up operating with 2 water plants for a while at that point, simply because of the finances.
Okay, so the total capital cost that's projected over the period is about $45 million. And about half of that is anticipated to come from user fees and as well as systems development charges. So some of the plant capacity can be paid for by future growth as they connect to the system and paid through systems development charges. And whatever other money becomes available that the city can pursue in terms of grants and other things will certainly be on the table. The water financial plan has the most acute financial needs driven by this significant investment that's needed. And so the recommended rate increases are 5% per year based on the committee's review of several different options. These are basically to fund the inflationary increases to system operation and maintenance costs. So these bars include both staffing costs. They show that the total costs when you combine the operation and maintenance costs with the funding, the pay-as-you-go funding that needs to go towards capital improvements. So the orange bars at the top of the chart are the capital improvements. And then as you get the farther out in the plan, at the top, you see a dark blue. That's that assumed debt service, perhaps, to help fund the plant. So the slope of the line is the 5% is at a 5% per year increase in rates in order to pay for the anticipated inflation and ongoing operation and maintenance costs. No additional staffing is anticipated. This is purely about continuing to keep the lights on, pay for chemicals and existing staffing, and pay for the needed improvements in the short term and continue to maintain a reserve that will help fund that very large expense that is anticipated in the roughly the 8-year period. This chart shows the monthly bill in orange, and it's apologize that it's hard to read the little the numbers and the other cities that are in this comparison along the bottom. But the orange shows where Newberg is today and where after the first 5% increase, where, you know, the comparison within the range of these other communities. The bill increase is $2.71 associated with the 5% increase in the first year. And so that's why the position moves up in this graphic. Now, understand that we're comparing a recommended rate to take effect January of 2025 with providers, other providers' rates from 2023 and 2024. So they are also going to be increasing. It's not known at this point in time by how much, but it is possible that the city's position in the comparison here won't change at all, depending on what other communities are also facing in terms of capital and operation and maintenance costs. This information is, you know, not exactly relevant to the situation. It's of interest, and people generally are curious about how the city's their own bills compare to others. But the fact of the matter is the committee, when they look at and make the recommendations, are looking at the needs of this city and this system. So that's what the recommendations are based on. And as I said, this is the system with the largest dollar increase in the monthly bill, so it is having the most impact on the pocketbook. All right, back to Lance to talk about the sanitary sewer system.
So general overview of our wastewater or sanitary sewer system. The map here just sort of shows you a general sort of scale of the highlights of the wastewater system. There's pretty much a wastewater pipe in every street in Newberg, and in total, we have roughly 437,000 linear feet of that sewer pipeline that takes all the wastewater from everybody's individual homes and businesses and transports it to the wastewater treatment plant for effective treatment before that is either clean water discharging to the river or solids that are being processed for disposal really through our solids handling system. In addition to that, we have almost 2,000 manholes for access to the system, as well as a substantial amount of force mains and lift stations to overcome all of the gravity and normal issues of topography of the community. Some of the key wastewater investments and projects that are in the future or are currently underway include I&I projects. This is really efforts to limit the amount of just groundwater that can seep into the sanitary sewer pipes. A lot of the pipes are old, some disjointed, and so groundwater has the ability to get in. We use projects, a lot of lining. You can see in the picture there what a liner looks like as it's going in through a manhole and lining the old pipes so that it basically creates a new pipe inside the old pipe that eliminates a lot of that I&I, and that helps at the plant because remember at the plant, whether it's the wastewater that you flush or the groundwater that's coming in through a gap or a leak, all of that gets treated at the wastewater treatment plant. And so we have to manage that. And we do see significant peak increases in flows in the wintertime at the plant versus the summertime where we have a lot less rain influencing that. So a lot of pipe maintenance goes on with the wastewater system. Also maintenance improvements, lift station maintenance, lift station improvements, all the pumps, all the hardware has to be fixed and maintained and replaced over time. Individual sites that need additional investments or something having to do with wastewater. This is all sanitary sewer projects. And then solids handling includes items like compost sales and investments there, properly handle and dispose of those solids. And then obviously investments in the plant that's located near the river on the south edge of town. Long-term projects, master plan updates, accommodating any kind of future development, lift stations. Eventually, the system, as it grows, will need additional investments at the wastewater treatment plant. That includes what we call oxidation ditches, which are basically, they're not ditches, they're actually concrete lined areas that process the wastewater and allow the wastewater process to appropriately break down all of those different items that are coming or different solids and liquids that are coming through the wastewater system for proper disposal. Chlorine is one of the systems we use to make sure that we neutralize any bacteria in the wastewater stream before discharging to the river. So that's due for expansion as well as, again, more lift station work to accommodate flow. And at this point, it's preliminary capital funding plan. I'll turn it back over to Deb and she can run with it.
Okay, so this chart again shows you the annual capital improvement expenses, which are again, kind of about planning for the future. In the short term, the investments are kind of dwarfed by this future cost that's looming out there for this, those longer term projects, which happen to be quite expensive relative to the shorter term projects. So this capital plan has about $23 million in the shorter term and is anticipated to come from all current revenues like rates and systems development charges, no debt at this point. But there is that uncertainty around the timing of the additional plant improvements that will be needed. So the recommended sewer plan, in the context of what's happening with the water system and the need to increase those rates more significantly, the committee is proposing a 3.5% increase consistent with what was projected 2 years ago for this same period of time. And what's interesting on this chart is the line that starts in the upper left-hand corner and you see dramatically drops over the planning period. And that is the fund balances or the capital reserves that the rates have generated with the purpose of funding capital improvements, both in the short term and in the longer term. And the trick is not to spend all of the money to buy down rates in the short term, and then in the longer term, when one of these major improvements has to be constructed, to not have any flexibility to use reserves for those types of improvements. And that's how the city in the past got itself highly leveraged in terms of borrowing and the additional interest and other requirements that came along with that. And there were years where the rate increases were going up significantly because of the need to meet the debt obligations. So this plan, the rate slope, which is in the red line, is below, in pretty much every year of the plan, the actual projected costs that are represented by those bars. And part of that is because of the size of the existing debt that the city is responsible for the wastewater system, because there were significant plant expansion and improvements a decade or more ago that are being paid off over time. So to keep the rate increase at the 3.5% and to fund the needed improvements in the short term, the city is going to have to draw down significantly on those reserves. And the committee in future years will be able to look at that, and as more information is available on the timing of the more significant improvements, can adjust that those projections. But at this point, the 3.5% is what is recommended to balance the affordability concerns with the financial needs in the short term. And again, here we have, no additional staffing increases. It's inflationary, plus the existing debt, plus the short-term capital improvements. Yeah, please, Will.
So there's another part to this also, which is that our objective is to work on debt reduction. You see what a large component of this particular rate is made of debt. We've been working to develop new income sources, and we already have 2 of those new income sources that started this year. What we're going to do with our new income is we're going to retire early our communications tower debt, which is not related to this, but it's the smallest piece of debt, so we want to do that first. Then we're going to turn to trying to retire the wastewater expansion debt early. If we can succeed in retiring that debt early, And my quip or my joke is I want to see it retired before I'm retired. Then that will have a really positive impact on rates in that 2031, 2032 timeframe. If we can get that piece of debt retired early, that's our objective. So this isn't a pipe dream. We've already got 2 new revenue sources that are coming online, and we're thinking of new things all the time.
If we don't retire it early, when is it projected to be paid off?
2036.
Thank you.
You can see that some of it does, it decreases during this planning period, but it doesn't, it's not fully retired until beyond, so. This chart then shows the Newberg's wastewater rates or bills, in this case, for a typical single-family residential wastewater customer with 500 units of water billed in comparison to the same communities that I showed you on the water slide. And these are, for those of you who can't read the names of the communities, these are generally from across, well, they're all within the state of Oregon, and most of them are within the region here. What's notable for both wastewater and stormwater is that at least half, if not more than half, of the communities on the lower end of this comparison are part of regional systems. So the green bars are all customers that are part of regional systems where multiple cities are served by a single system. And there are economies of scale when you have partner cities and being part of a larger system where the costs can be spread over a larger number of customers. And so you can see that playing out here quite clearly, how the rates for those regional systems tend to be lower. So the 3.5% rate increase does not change the city's position on this comparison. They are definitely on the higher end. It's reflecting being an individual system, the fact that the plant expansion required significant debt, as Will said, and that there are other factors too, where the city is paying for costs associated with the service laterals that other cities by policy are not paying. They're requiring customers to bear the burden of those costs. So those are the main factors that are the result in the user fees for customers being on the upper end of this comparison. Yes.
If just, well, for me too, I was thinking the audience, but what kind of services would be paid directly by other cities that we're not having our residents pay? Do you have an example or two?
Sure, I can answer that. So, example would be, specifically the lateral repairs. So a lateral, for those that don't know, is the sewer pipe that runs from the main. Usually the main is 8 inches or larger and, in diameter. And then the, lateral is the individual service that runs from the main to the, house or business. In the case of Newberg, the city's policy is to have the city maintain that lateral from the main to the edge of the right of way. And then the individual customer would maintain it from the right of way to their house. So through their private property, through their yard. And typically the cost of lateral repairs are quite significant. Having previously worked in a city that had the opposite policy, where the city required the individual to pay for any repair or maintenance to that lateral from their house all the way to the main, you could see that when there's a lateral damage, maybe the pipe has come apart, maybe it's sunk, maybe there's a blockage, something of that nature. That work in the right of way means that in the case of Newberg, the city is absorbing the cost of fixing the street, digging it up, replacing it, repairing it. All that is done at no additional cost to the resident. In the case of other communities that don't have that policy, the individual resident would be required, or business owner would be required to pay for a permit, dig it up, hire a contractor, fix, repair, replace, fix the street, patch the street. All of those costs would be borne by the individual property owner. And so in total, I mean, a typical lateral repair, you could see, particularly if it's a deep pipe, you could see a lateral repair cost of just fixing that piece in the right of way be $10,000 to $20,000 just for that one individual piece of service line. So you can see that the city is absorbing a lot of additional costs that some of these other communities are not including in their base rate structure. I'm up, so hopefully, everybody's okay with us moving forward from sewer, sanitary sewer wastewater to transportation utility fee, the TUF fee as it's called. TUF is really there to, help support the really underfunded street maintenance. I think everybody's pretty aware that, gas tax revenue has not kept pace with the cost of maintenance of street infrastructure, both federally and at the state level. In fact, I don't think the federal gas tax has increased, I want to say, since Clinton was in office. And before that, maybe Reagan increased the federal gas tax. So you can see that federally, locally, state, nobody in the transportation sector is keeping pace with inflation. So inflation is really chewing away at the value of those collected funds. And so we supplement that with the transportation utility fee here locally to help maintain city streets, and all of the transportation utility funds are earmarked to road maintenance. So the goal, of course, is to provide good street maintenance and ensure quality street for safe passage, livability, property values, all of the stuff that goes with street, the way we get to and from work and school and every place we go. Investments in the TUF fund are almost 100% pavement maintenance. We do crack and slurry sealing, mill and overlay, or grind and overlay, or inlay, depending on the terminology you're using. A lot of total reconstruction as well, where not just the top surface layer of pavement needs improvement, but structural repairs to the underlying layers of rock and other issues. A lot of that has to do with drainage. Sidewalk and ADA ramps are also a part of that. Not so much sidewalk repair or improvements. There's really no sidewalk improvements in the TUF fund. Sidewalk work is pretty much 100% ADA ramps, which are mandated federally and by the state to be done and improved in conjunction with any significant pavement maintenance. So whenever we're doing grind and overlay or total reconstruction, we are state and federally mandated to do ADA ramp improvements. Crack and slurry seals not typically required. So like I already mentioned, this is really a function of declining gas revenue relative to costs of maintenance, and really providing a dedicated source of funding. And at this point, I'll hand it back over to Deb, or am I still going? Yeah. So I'll just take this whole thing. So, and really it's tough, in this context is really about purchasing power. And again, I feel like we're sort of a broken record here, but, inflation has really taken a huge chunk out of what we can accomplish with the funds that we have available to us. And what that has done is basically resulted in declining pavement conditions across the city. So you can see here in this chart a breakdown of overall pavement conditions. What we will typically do is rate pavement on a scale of 1 to 100. 100 would be brand new, perfect condition. A 1, really anything below probably 10 or 20 is basically gravel. So you're pretty much shot when you're down there. So in general, most people consider 100 to 70 good pavement, good range, probably not a lot of potholes, pretty good condition, not a lot of cracking. Fair would be 70 to 55. That's going to be so a lot of cracking starting to show up. Some potholes probably in there as well, but fairly minor. 55 to 0 is pretty poor. I mean, you're significant potholing, significant maintenance. And of course, when you get to that level in the 55 to 0 range, the cost of maintenance goes way up because you're not just doing some surface treatment, you're actually having to structurally repair the pavement. And you can see here over time what has happened with a breakdown both by the type, street type. Arterial would be our prime streets, collectors. Residential is your normal street in front of typical homes. And the percentage also included is a breakdown of areas, so you can get a sort of a sense of scale of this issue. But you can see that over time, 2014 to 2020, 2020 to 2024, a reduction in the condition of that pavement. So we are losing ground over time in our investment in transportation infrastructure, even with the tough that we currently have. So you can see here a breakdown on a map of the different pavement conditions. Hopefully it's pretty logical here. Any of the newer developments or newer subdivisions have relatively good pavement condition. Older areas of town, relatively poor pavement condition. And you can see the breakdown in that across the city as a whole in the various locations around town. So sort of give you again a sort of an understanding of the scale of this issue. We'll look at in these next couple slides at individual pavement preservation locations and the associated costs with that preservation. So if you're looking at a location like in this case, I picked out Madrona Drive, and the dimensions there is the length and the width of the street. So just under 1,600 feet long and 32 feet wide from curb to curb here. This street really could use some crack sealing and slurry sealing, and the cost of that crack and slurry sealing is about $45,000, a little under $45,000 using current costs from our latest bids, as well as costs that we have been able to get from surrounding or other communities in the region. And then you go to a location like South River Street, where we've done utility improvements, done some patching where those utility improvements are, but there's still additional work to be done there with significant cracking and really just the ride quality of the location. So in that case, considerably longer than the last street, but a little narrower, about 2,700 feet by 24 feet wide. A 2-inch mill and overlay would be what would be required here. And the cost of that 2-inch mill and overlay is about $357,000 for that location. So you can see the substantial cost difference between filling some cracks. And for those that aren't aware, slurry seal is basically a very thin overlay of the pavement that's about a 1/4 inch thick. That's sand and asphalt that helps keep rain from penetrating into the underlying areas, extends pavement life, and is very cost-effective treatment for streets that are not in very bad shape. When you get to this level, the costs go up significantly because now you're 2 inches thick, not a 1/4 inch thick, and everything that goes along with that. Plus, of course, the ADA improvements and those kinds of things that have to go along with mill and overlay project. Then you get into streets that are in that poor condition. Example here is South Willamette Street. Again, about the same length, about 2,000, a little less than 2,000 feet, 32 feet wide. But this is really a street that needs reconstruction, significant potholing, significant structural cracks and some structural failures. Of course, the ADA improvements would be required as well. Not touching any of the curb. Hopefully a lot of the curb here can be preserved. But the cost of that, which in this case, I would estimate this to be a cement treated base project where we actually would chew up almost the entire depth of the pavement and aggregate underneath the pavement, and add a cement treatment to that to bind everything together and create a solid foundation for new asphalt to be placed over the top of that. That cost of reconstruction is about just under $1 million for that one street. So you can see the cost of road pavements and maintenance has skyrocketed, quite honestly, in my lifetime of doing this work. Several years ago, even a decade ago, that project would have probably be half of that cost, if not less. So cost of oil, cost of rock, cost of power, everything that goes into pavement has significantly increased in cost over time.
Lance, comparing the work that was done on Madrona with the crack seal and slurry, is that work, it's necessary because it's a newer street, it's not it's not as in bad shape as River, but is it fair to say that you doing that treatment would actually preserve the street longer so that it wouldn't get to the point of South River or Willamette?
Exactly. That is exactly the goal, is to try and keep, if you go back to this street, this map, what we're trying to do is keep as much of the green by using cost-effective treatments like the slurry and crack sealing that extends that pavement life at a very effective cost and allows you to avoid really that reconstruction cost. Not investing, not doing, again, back to my grandma, but an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That is exactly the case in pavement maintenance. So anytime you can extend that, think of the siding on your home, if you paint it regularly, it's going to last a heck of a lot longer than if you do absolutely nothing and you have to replace it later, and that costs a heck of a lot more. And so what we're doing here is trying to balance those needs of keeping the green, the good condition streets good, while simultaneously trying to invest in those poor condition streets to bring them up to good condition.
So I think the committee in their deliberations were particularly interested in that trend, that pavement condition trend, and the fact that it had declined so significantly, and that they're really, and because of the years where there were no rate increases and the value of the current TUF has declined, wanting to make a meaningful change to the funding of this system to turn the tide on that trend. So the current rates generate about 1.2 million. And the recommended plan is to increase the funding capacity from the TUF by $300,000 to $400,000 at the end of this plan. To do that requires about just under $1 increase in the TUF initially. And you can see that the city is currently at the very lowest in the range of other communities that are charging the transportation utility fee. These fees range from the current rate in Newberg, which is about $5.60 up to over $16 a month. The increase of about $1 would advance the position, just move slightly to the right, still significantly below the other communities, and would make inroads in terms of, no pun intended, the maintenance declines that the city has experienced. Yeah.
What's the percentage if it's 98-cent increase on the TUF? Do you know what that percentage is?
That I don't know that off the top of my head. Sorry, I didn't. But I've got the total bill percent at the end, but I can get that to you. Yeah.
And I think it's important to realize that one of our advantages is that we are a long-established city with a good history. And one of our disadvantages is we're a long-established city with a long history, because many of the sections of road, which are basically now become like back roads of Arkansas, not the best roads I've driven on, those are in the older parts of town. And you know, that's really what is driving this, is we've got to try to fix some of our road sections in our older parts of town.
You can just advance them for me. So moving on from TUF to stormwater system overview. This again is just sort of another map, big on maps, to just show the nature of these systems and how they cover the community. In this case, the black outline sort of basically is the city limits of Newberg, and then the different colors, green, sort of that yellow tan color, and the purple color represent the different watersheds that each section of the city drains to. And of course, everything eventually flows to the river. And included in this map gives you a little bit of insight into some of the piping and stormwater conveyance systems that the city has to appropriately direct rainwater and drainage. You can see the details, over 77 miles of stormwater pipe that we actively work on and maintain. These include both several runs of long, large diameter pipes, as well as culverts for individual creek crossings and stuff like that nature. 64, in addition to that, we also have 64 miles of open channels, creeks and rivers, where we're actively engaged in managing those, both in partnership with private property owners, as well as any areas that the city owns outright. So all part and parcel to the stormwater system. In addition to that, if we flip the next slide, we also have a lot of stormwater retention and detention facilities that are required. Again, another regulatory requirement in the West is water quality, treating the water. Our goal is to have clean water get to the river so that we can all enjoy the benefits of the aquatic environment of the river, whether that's fishing or boating or recreation. We want the river to be a place where we want to be. So we invest quite a bit in detention and water quality facilities that help preserve and improve that water so that heavy metals, and that could include brake dust off of brakes. It could be pollutants like pesticides or herbicides, all shedding into these facilities. All of those water quality facilities are also items that we will work on and maintain, as well as oversight of privately owned water quality facilities and regulatory oversight of those. So this is just giving you sort of a list of some of the locations of future stormwater system improvements and investments, whether it's individual pipe extensions or replacements or maintenance of these different systems in the stormwater overall system that we have here in town, as well as future looking investments where we're looking at future needs, and a lot of that is addressed in the stormwater master plan. And we also anticipate a stormwater master plan here in the next upcoming couple of years.
So the capital improvement plan is shown here. It is the smallest, it's $8 million over the planning period. The rates are projected to cover the majority of that need, with some also some revenue coming in from new development through the systems development charges. The master plan, as Lance said, will be done some point in the next couple of years, and it will provide an updated longer term plan that can be used to prioritize improvements and refine projections for the one of the next rate review cycles. The for the costs, the capital costs and the operation and maintenance costs that are projected over the next several years, the committee did recommend staying with the course of what had been a prior rate review recommendation. And that is to increase the rates at, I think it's about a 6.5% rate increase, but it's because the revenue base and the rates are much smaller than the water and wastewater. That's about just over $1 per month increase in a customer bill. Even with that, there is this same kind of phenomenon happening that's projected to happen with the need to utilize existing reserves or fund balance to pay for some of the capital improvements that are needed. So the black line that comes down as you move to the right, that's the projected ending fund balance. And so those rate increases are calibrated to try again to balance affordability, but also concerns over providing for the needed investments as well as the operation and maintenance requirements. This again shows you the bill comparison for stormwater. The same communities that have the regional wastewater utilities also have regional stormwater utilities, which helps to keep those rates lower. And Newberg is a little bit higher than the, kind of the midpoint of this comparison. The rate increases that are recommended result in a $1.09 increase in the first year. And again, all of these rates are 23-24 rates and don't include the rate increases that are likely to come associated with those agencies. So with that, just wanted to pull it all together and show you the individual systems' current bills for a typical single family customer. Understand that some customers use more or less water, which impacts both the water and the sewer bills. The storm and the transportation utility fee, or the TUF, are flat rates that are charged the same for all residential customers. The current bill, as I showed at the beginning of the presentation, is about $160 a month. The projected increase associated with all of the rate increases for each of the four systems is about $7 a month each year, which is about 4.4% overall. Just, inflation now is running around 3% or so. As we talked about at the beginning of the presentation, this is in line or below what the rate increases are nationwide and in other utilities around the state.
And there is one other thing to talk about on this particular slide. If we can be allowed to do our work, we're going to get the communications line item off your bill entirely in 2026. So that's going to save you just under $3 per month at that point. So by working on debt reduction, we want to progressively get rid of some of these things that will have a long-term effect on lowering the charges. So as you look at this, also please bear in mind that if we don't get that off in 2026, you can ask her to have me fired. Because I want to do it and we've got the money, we're going to try and do it, and it'll take 3 years. So we've already started. So please bear that in mind.
Final slide is to show the community comparison with all of the systems combined, and Newberg is 5th from the far right. This previous chart here, shows you that the sewer bill is more than half of the total bill. And so that really drives the city's position in the rate comparison. So as you recall, because of the regional considerations, the regional systems versus single systems, and the cost factors that Lance talked about, even though the city is lower on the comparisons with water and particularly tough, the sewer being the majority of the bill means that you're still on the upper 20 quartile of the comparison. The bill or the rate increases all around are not projected to change the position. And again, everybody else will be increasing their rates. It's just a question of how much. And some will outpace what the committee is presenting or recommending for Newberg. Katie, do you want to talk about the
Can I ask a really quick question?
Sure.
You said you were hoping to get rid of the by 2031, 2032?
The first piece of debt, which is the smallest one, being the communications tower, if we can get that retired 2 years early in 26, that enables us, that frees up enough money to take the first line item off the municipal billing statement. I did some back of the postcard calculation. It'll be $2.75 per month in 2026. So that line item will come off. We will then continue to work on debt reduction on the wastewater debt, a much larger debt. The objective being to get that retired in the region of 2032. In time, hopefully to do something effective with the water capacity. Obviously, the year that we get that wastewater debt retired, that will have a very beneficial effect on the wastewater rate for that year. That number, we don't know yet. Obviously, we haven't calculated that. But the logical thing to do is to start with the smallest piece of debt first and then move on to the larger piece of debt. So I can say that some of the cost increases, which are not abnormal, will be mitigated if we can achieve our goal in 2026. And that's just around the corner. And it's in the 3-year budget model that we're preparing for the budget meetings.
So the goal of the meeting tonight is the committee has heard the presentation. They will next hear public comment, and then After that, the committee will make a formal recommendation for a rate increase for each utility system. And then that formal recommendation will go to the next city council meeting, which is on March 4th. And then that will be an informational hearing session for the city council members to hear the recommendation. And then on March 18th will be another public hearing. And then that's when city council will make a formal approval or resolution of the rate increase, depending on what happens at the next meetings.
Just want to clarify, what we're recommending is what's just presented by Deb. So this is what's going to be presented to the board or to the city council.
Well, you guys will take a vote on that tonight. So you will make,
I thought the votes were just last week or last meeting.
that was for what we were presenting for tonight for the
Okay.
public hearing. So you guys will
Okay.
take an official vote
After public comment or?
after public comment.
All right.
Yes,
It's not on the agenda. That's why I'm getting confused.
yes.
All right. Public comment. Only little tidbit I've got is I got 3 minutes per person, 2 minutes afterwards if additional closing comments are necessary. Do you want me to run this?
I can run some of it.
You go for it.
So usually we start with proponents and we do not have any that have registered. So the first opponent of it is Lily. I think you had to register before the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure you'll be able to speak tonight. I'm sorry.
On college days, life doesn't always work out.
Okay. I don't know that we can do that.
Yes, we'll make an exception.
Okay. Perfect. So hang on one second before we start. Do you have a timer or I can just time it? You can, okay. We'll get a timer going that way.
Make me more nervous.
That's not our intention, Lily.
No. We're just required to for public comment.
Ready?
Yep, go for it.
One of the things I'm concerned about is I live alone in a house that was built in 1930. It's just a few blocks from here. And I pay almost the amount for a total family for the water that I use. And I don't understand how that can happen. And it is more than my other utilities, more than my gas and electric bill together, the water that I pay for the year or the whole service. And so for a senior who's retired, that's a tremendous amount. And when you start talking about the water going up 5%, the sewer 3.5%, and the tough going up 6.5%, that sounds a lot more than 4.5% to me. So my concern is, as we increase the rate of all these things, that there's no place where a senior person, where our income is limited, is able to keep up with this increase. And so that's my concern. I don't know how to do that. I understand the costs that you incur, but at my house, I have to have a budget too. And so the city has to have a budget, but I have to have a budget too. And I can't pay more for water and not eat. That doesn't make any sense. So my concern is that even though it says 4.4%, if you're going 5% water, 3.5% for sewer, and 6.5% for tough, that's going to impact me in the long run. Maybe not this year, but in 3 years. Will I still be able to have water at my house? So that's the concern. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one for public comment is Carolyn.
Actually, there's a few things that I don't understand. But in my own head, common sense would say, if everybody in this city would participate with the water, the tough, the sewer, for everything, renters and homeowners, the whole situation would be a lot better. It is so unfair to make the homeowners take the whole brunt of the situation. I'm a single homeowner too. I'm retired, okay? And this just outrages me, okay? I pay for storm drain. Guess what? My rainwater that goes down my gutter, it doesn't go in the storm drain. It goes in my backyard. I have a dry well. And I've talked to you guys about this, and I don't even remember the excuse that I was given, but I think that is totally, totally, totally unfair. And I agree with Lily. Us seniors are having a very difficult time, and in case you all haven't noticed, the cost of living has just skyrocketed. I can only afford $100 a month for food, and that doesn't even cut it. Okay? We don't get that much of an increase. If we get anything at all, Medicare just grabs some of it right away from us. So we have even less. What I got this year was only $34 a month more. And that's it. Yeah. So I just think that there's gotta be a way that you guys should be able to come up with ways to earn more money. Like making renters pay more, making them pay their fair share for water and the tuft. I don't hardly drive anywhere. I stay home a lot, so I shouldn't have to pay at all. And anybody else too, okay? I don't know what you guys do with the money that you get from the gas tax. That's supposed to go towards streets. But I would very strongly suggest that you guys start finding other ways to help pay for this. Actually, homeowners pay stuff for Newberg in their property taxes as well. And I figured out I pay stuff into Newberg 3 different ways. Yeah. And it's just disgusting because I don't benefit from all of it, any of it. I conserve my water. I conserve like crazy. Yeah. But
Agreed.
this increase you guys are talking about, it really concerns me as well.
That's the 3 minutes.
Yeah. Oh. So, yeah. I just, like I said, if everybody paid, everyone, renters and homeowners, if you got renters paid what they should, that would solve a lot of your problem. Same thing with the tuft. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next one we have up is Chuck.
Okay, there we are. How y'all doing? So my wife and I we're a long time Newberg residents. She's been here over 50 years. I think I'm here 46. We've been involved in the community. She's volunteered for a local food bank for 10 years. I was actually one of your firefighters next door from 98 to 16 or to 14, 16 years total. And presently involved with YCSO Search and Rescue as a medic and a searcher. So our children were born and raised here, and we've seen a lot of things happen in town. I remember when the water bills were mailed out once every 2 months. They were so small, they were $7, $9 every 2 months. I'm here not so much, you've heard the senior side. My wife and I are retired. And I can say, yeah, everything we got for Social Security, the medical took right away. It's just all gone. We have zero to cover anything. We've seen PGE, Northwest Natural, and everything else go up 60, 70% in the past 2-3 years. This economy has been a slow moving train wreck. But I'm here, I think, for the families, the younger families that are getting hit by all sides. I can't imagine raising my family of 5 in today's environment. You know, when I read that, you know, it costs the average family another $800, $900 a month to afford what they had 3 years ago, I don't know where that money comes from. And I know you guys are caught between the rock and the hard spot too with inflation. It's the common theme here. When I go to a not to be named hardware store here in town and pick an item off the shelf that's 10 something, and they make it up to the cash register and it's 13 something. I mean, that inflation comes at you awful fast, 30% in just 100 feet. But I know the families are struggling. If you guys can hold the line anywhere you can, any way you can help out, I think PGE has what, 2 rate increases this year? Just PGE, you know, and it's, at the end of this year, we're probably gonna be seeing a lot of our costs almost double. So yeah, we're senior citizens ourselves and, we're on a fixed income. And I feel, of course, I know a lot of other senior citizens and, but it's the families, I look at the families today, what they're going through to put food on the table and stuff like that. And so I just encourage you, I mean, as a firefighter, I used a lot of water. But, and I'll have to say one thing, as a former firefighter, we have an excellent water system in this town. And you don't realize that till you go to other cities. I won't name who they are, but we are very well equipped for water in this town. We have a fabulous system. So anyway, do the best you can, try to hold the cost down and, keep the public informed, and that's it. You mind me turn this thing off?
Thank you. And our last commenter is Bradley. No. First name only tonight.
Well, listening to this tonight, you guys have a monumental task on your hands. And I'm glad I don't have it. I think you've heard about the senior debate here. I'm a senior. These are supposed to be our golden years. I think it's about passing the gold out. But I do, tonight listening, I do appreciate the effort and work you're trying to do. Today, I went online, I got my water bill today and was looking at it and it had customer rate on it. And that has increased and my wife is the bill payer, so I had this other little voice over here talking in my good ear, wanting to know more information that I don't have. But I did go online and I said, it's like February 20th of last week, Investing in America agenda from Washington DC put $50 billion into water projects for clean water and water treatment in all 50 states and all territories of the United States. And I don't know how we access some of that $50 billion, but we're taxpayers. And it's our money. If they've got hundreds of billions of dollars to send outside the United States, then we need to put our foot down and the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I've lived enough of life to have been a squeaky wheel a few times. I know how to do it. And once you do it the first time and they put a restraining order against you, you go, that was nothing. And then they pull the restraining order. My wife's family's been here since 1850. They came in a wagon train from Iowa and lived up here on the mountain until all this was cleared out. And then life started building here. And she sees the change. Her family kept a history of the town, of the wagon train journey and everything here. And you're trying to maintain that. You're trying to keep things moving forward. And I not only wish you good luck, I pray for you. But as seniors, we are struggling. And so when I went online today, it was maybe to get an idea, how can we get some more money flowing here? So anyhow, I just want to thank you for your time. I just wanted to come and say I found a source of $50 billion. It started in all of our pockets and some of it should end up back here, apparently in our water lines. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you actually click the button on the mic?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And that concludes our public comment tonight. Oh, we have one on the phone? Oh, I don't think we had any on the phone that registered.
So I would like to just say a little bit. I appreciate very much the challenges that people are facing, particularly people are retired, like my own in-laws, who I'm now helping support, who don't have any other income sources other than Social Security. So I'm not blind to this at all. There are very few ways that we can restrain the rates and still have roads to drive on and water to drink. One of the ways is to not increase our staff. despite the increase in the population. And we're already doing that. Another way is to try to pursue grants like the one that the gentleman just cited. Recently, we were declined a grant because one of our master plans was not new enough for the federal government, who wanted a master plan set that was 2 years or younger to make us grant eligible. So a lot of the things the federal government tells you are lies. So we tried to get a grant to help with the water plan and we were declined because our master plans are not up to date enough. And those cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. But we are going to 100% continue to pursue getting more grant money to help with our system. The only other lever I have at our disposal is the council's commitment to debt reduction. And if we can retire elements of our debt, that frees up liquidity to contain the rates, because a lot of our rates are built upon pieces of debt. And these are the things I have in mind. But I will say, if you have any other income generating ideas that don't hit our ratepayers, please email will.worthy@newbergoregon.gov. I want to hear them. Thank you, sir. I would love to live in a smaller community myself. Unfortunately, private property rights are what they are, and folks have the right to sell their land, and home builders buy the land and they build on it. Cities don't have the right to cap their population or to ban development. In my mind, the best development that we could do in this town is some industrial development to bring in some more jobs and some more income, not more housing, but it's a free country. I'm sorry. The builders actually do pay a large portion in system development charges. And I can email you tonight the models, the SDC models, if you'd like to see them, because we've worked really hard on those.
All right. I haven't done this before, so this is a little different. You threw me a curveball. So what I'm gonna do is you've got what we documented and what we said last meeting.
I believe so. You may have to help me with one of them.
So
Yes.
what I propose, so what I want to do going forward is you give me by system what we said,
Yes.
and then we can document a vote, another one.
Yes. And then somebody will need to make a motion and second it, and then there'll be a vote. And that will be the official recommendation, unless you would like to take any deliberation right now on things that you've heard or anything. Or you can, I'll reread the rates to you and then you guys can make a motion, second, and deliver.
So the first question is, do we want to have any further discussion based upon the public comment? Does anybody have a motion that,
I don't know if we're going to accept comment here, but I think we can maybe draw upon some of the questions that public comment had. And also to point a question, Katie, I know that there was a system that did have an exemption. There was a public comment that, was that wastewater or stormwater where there's a potential exemption if there's some paperwork completed? We talked about it in one of the meetings we've had previously, that there are some community members who file for exemptions for certain fees.
For like lower income.
Oh, the
No,
low-
it was if there was like, if there was like demonstration of certain activities takes place, then they're exempt from certain fees. This was just really more in question of one of the public comments.
Was that the veterans allowance?
No, maybe it said it
That's
was,
what I was.
I was thinking it was the low income or the veterans allowance.
Oh, I thought there was like, if there was a shown of demonstration of like stormwater collection that
Oh.
maybe,
Oh, the stormwater. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know the specifics of the particular property, but yeah.
but just specific to that public comment, I don't know if more information can be provided there. Like if there is an exemption for stormwater and it can be demonstrated that they're not adding to the system, I certainly think we should reach out to the community member there.
We certainly can do that for those special programs, and there's a low income program. There's also a veterans allocation program as well. So there are a few programs that can help with that stuff.
I have a favor. When you give us the rate increase amounts, Katie, would you also tell us what percentage the increase is?
Yes, I was actually just gonna do a percentage.
I don't hear any motion to go off and do further deliberation based upon the public comment. So with that, as soon as Katie's ready, she's gonna go off and share the item. A motion, second to a vote, and then we'll execute a vote.
Okay. So for water, it was a 5% increase. For wastewater, it was a 3.5% increase. The transportation utility fee was 17.5% increase. And the stormwater was 6.5%.
And the total was 4.4
Yes, in
For a
total.
typical bill.
For a
which was-
typical bill, it was
for
4.4.
typical bill, which was pretty similar to what the committee had approved 2 years ago.
Yes.
It was 4.1.
And the reason for a question came up in the public comment, I will clarify the numbers. The numbers are the reason why these percentages actually do result in the 4.4, is that the volumes as far as what it is on the bill, it's a much smaller portion, especially the tough piece. I'm not mistaken. So with that, I motion that we approve what Katie just read as far as that rates for going forward for, it starts in 2020.
Yep, January 2025 and January 2026.
Thank you.
I would like to second that.
So now take a vote.
And we vote. Anna.
Do I actually get to vote? Oh, yes, yay. Yay.
Yay. I approve as well, but I also want to make a comment to the senior citizens because I'm one of them too, been on Social Security for several years. So I know that that's a balance. And it's tough to do that when you've got a COLA of 3.2 and a cost here of 4.4. But after sitting through all these meetings and I think it's the right decision and we made some good trade-offs here. So yes, I approve.
Ron, I approve.
Yes, I approve.
Derek and nay or no. My reasoning is I was looking for something neutral from last year and we got close, but we had to make an adjustment in water that was greater than last. And then a necessary judgment, increase in tough, but overall I was looking for very similar, if not flat from prior. So I'm gonna vote nay.
I'm also nay.
Okay, motion passes.
And with that, we're adjourned. Katie, can you clarify as far as our committee, do we go to both the March 4th?
Nope. You guys, the committee is now complete. So unless there is,
Unless you pull us back because,
Yes.
the city council can say, go back to committee.
yes,
And then we can go, which is typical for the politics. And then we go off, we have one more meeting after that.
yes. So if city council sends it back to the committee,
Yeah.
there'll be another meeting. But as of now, the committee's made their recommendation and it's complete.
I have one follow-up question. In one of the previous cycles, we had gotten together once, I believe in May, to talk about the assistance programs. Is there a need for that again at all?
No, I believe in 2021, there was a vote to remove that from the committee. So now that's at the city level and the city reviews the applications for the assistants and the veterans. Did you adjourn? Okay,
Did she stop?
thank you.
Did she stop the recording?
I don't know. I just wanted to thank the committee for all of the time that you've spent coming to these meetings. We really appreciate it.